Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Speaker.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Minister believe in the decriminalization of crack in children's parks, meth smoking in hospitals, or other hard drugs on public transit? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We believe in working with British Columbia and with any province that wants us to work with them on this, which is why we accepted their request to modify their pilot project on exactly those issues. This is something we will continue to do, to work in a basis of science around compassion and a medical approach, a health approach, not a criminal justice approach to dealing with the toxic drug supply and addictions. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we won't be taking lessons from the Conservatives that continue to chase after a Harper-era policy that their own advisors said was obsolete.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's an important question, Mr. Speaker, because we need to know what he's going to do next. I just gave him a chance to indicate whether he believes people should be allowed to smoke crack in children's soccer fields or meth in the faces of nurses in hospital rooms. He refused to answer, which begs the question of whether or not he will try to impose the same radical and extremist policy elsewhere. So once again, does he believe that people should be allowed to smoke meth or crack in children's soccer fields?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, obviously no one in this House does. That is why we agreed with the British Columbia government to modify their pilot project to better suit their concerns. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we've seen the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will continue to try and use tragedies and ongoing challenges Canadians and vulnerable people are facing to try and score political points. It's the same reason he's said that he will suspend people's fundamental rights and freedoms to score cheap political points. That is not something that Canadians want to see, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister legalized the use of hard drugs like meth, crack, and heroin in children's parks and in hospitals, and he won't rule out doing it again. This is not an academic question. The City of Toronto submitted a 153-page application, and I quote, seeking an exemption under Section 56.1 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act that would decriminalize personal possession of illicit substances within Toronto's boundaries. The Prime Minister's government has been working secretly with Toronto on that plan ever since. Will he, yes or no, rule out decriminalization in Canada's biggest city?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see the Leader of the Opposition trying to score cheap political points on the backs of vulnerable people to promote an ideology that does not work. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to be there with a thoughtful, compassionate-based public health approach on the toxic drug supply, and that means working with jurisdictions. When Vancouver asked us for an exemption, we said no. We would only work with the province, and that's what we did to work with BC. The same thing when it comes to Ontario or Quebec. We will only work with the provinces to ensure any projects they have go forward.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So he refuses to rule out repeating this disastrous experiment that killed 2,500 British Columbians, because he strongly supports decriminalization. And if he got a chance, he would do it all over again in Toronto, in Montreal, and anywhere else. Mr. Speaker, the final question, therefore, is even the radical NDP government in BC asked for him to reverse his decriminalization. Why did it take him 10 days and 66 more deaths to do it?
The Right Honourable Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will make political attacks on the backs of the most vulnerable people in this country.
Right.
We actually only received the completed request from British Columbia Friday last week and approved it the following Monday, 3 days later, Mr. Speaker. We will always respond quickly in a science-based way when people's lives are on the line. The Leader of the Opposition is continuing to spread falsehoods, Mr. Speaker, instead of actually following the facts and caring for Canadians.